Alex Anthopoulos said adding to the rotation, quote, is absolutely front burner this winter. But do the Braves need to add a starter? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today for Tuesday, October 28th. Your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're probably part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Monday was the sports equinox. All four major sports playing at the same time. Happens about once a year. People who were signed up for FanDuel had a great time with all of the different specials and options they had for the sports equinox. So if you're ready to sign up, go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today to get started. We're back after an unscheduled day off. I wasn't planning that. I got some sick kids over here, and we just couldn't get a show in for Monday. But I want to talk about the rotation, because Alex Anthopoulos told us over the winter that the team is going to add to the rotation, right? The question and the context here was Mark Bowman of MLB.com asking if right-handed hitting outfielder was in the list of options or of areas they wanted to upgrade, along with shortstop and rotation and bullpen. And AA gave a longer answer. We played the clip on here 2 weeks ago after that interview. But in essence, he said that the rotation, quote, is absolutely front burner. So he wants to add to the rotation. And Atlanta absolutely will do it. Now, whether it's free agency or a trade remains to be seen. I do think there is a point here when you go back and you listen to all the specifics in that interview. AA maybe gave us an indication of what he was going to do. He was asked about Ronaldo Lopez and whether or not he was going to stay as a starter. And the quote here, quote, but what if we have a bunch of starter trades that present themselves and so on? It would be a great problem to have. And the fact that he mentioned trading for a starter before signing one isn't something I really noticed until today when I was going back and pulling quotes from that for a story over at the newsletter, bravestoday.com. But if you think about it, Atlanta's really been the team that's been willing to take on salaries to get a player. Look at the Jared Kelenic deal. They took on, at the end of the day, it was like $15 million or so in bad contracts to get Jared Kelenic. When they got Raisel Iglesias, that was a salary dump. They got Jorge Soler. That was really a salary dump. Both of those were from the Angels. Like, Atlanta's not been afraid to take on, like, Chris Sale. That was, theoretically, that was going to be a salary dump from the Red Sox. He was just healthy and had a Cy Young season, which the Red Sox paid for, by the way. But Anthopoulos, unlike a lot of other teams, he's not really been afraid to take on money to get a guy. So you're probably going to see a trade for a starter. There are plenty of prominent free agents. I tweeted out some of the numbers from The Athletic and their free agent predictions. I have a lot of questions about the potential accuracy of those. I wouldn't say that Jim Bowden has a great reputation for accuracy on some of this stuff. That's the same guy that said that Ozzie could move to shortstop because he has plus arm strength, when Ozzie's literally the exact opposite. But when you look at some of those contracts, it was guys getting $27, $30 million a year, 5-year deals, 6-year deals, all areas Anthopoulos has not gone in free agency. So trades are a possibility. We've talked about that a little bit. I'll do another show where we kind of look at all of the possible trades for arms out there. There's a couple, like, we've talked about Sonny Gray, right? We've talked about Pablo Lopez. We haven't talked about a Freddie Peralta. We haven't talked about a Chris Bubich. We haven't talked about a Tariq Skubal, although I do not expect the Braves to do that at all. But point remains. Atlanta wants to add to the rotation. And when you look at what happened this year, like, you get it. You understand. Because this season, the Braves had unprecedented injuries to their rotation. Like, I don't know if people realize how bad it was. And the common thing that's gone around a lot, from a lot of people, myself included, is that Atlanta was the first team in MLB history to have all 5 opening day starters on the 60-day injured list at the same time. And that's clearly bad. It's all 5 of your opening day starters on the IL. I went back and checked yesterday. Not only were all 5 of those guys on the 60-day IL at the same time, they all spent at least a month on it at the same time. It wasn't like there was 3 or 4 days overlap. Nobody came off of it except for Chris Sale. Chris Sale went on June 19th. He came off August 30th. But the last guy of the 5 was Grant Holmes on September 27th. My sister's birthday, by the way. So not only, it's her fault, clearly. Thanks, Catherine. So not only did all 5 opening day starters for the Braves go on the 60-day IL and be on it at the same time, they were all on it for at least a month before Chris Sale came back. And he was the only one of the 5 that came back, right? Ronaldo Lopez finished the season on there. AJ Smith-Shawver's not going to be back until, at best, late in the year next year. I'm honestly not expecting anything from him in 2026, and that's nothing against him. I love the kid. I think he's fantastic. I just don't expect him to both be fully recovered and back to his old self in the season next year. Traditional Tommy John's a 15 to 18 month surgery. And when people say, oh, the internal brace has a shorter return time frame, this was, if I understand correctly, this was a UCL repair and an internal brace. This was still repairing the UCL in the elbow like you do in a traditional Tommy John. They just supplemented it with an internal brace. So, again, I don't expect AJ Smith-Shawver back in a meaningful capacity in 2026. But Schwallenbach should be back. He was throwing. Lopez was throwing. Grant Holmes is the open question right now. We just don't really know what his status is going to be. And I guess we can talk about that right now before we go to the next segment. Because the whole thing there was he was doing non-surgical rehab on the UCL. And he was able to do a little bit of throwing before the season ended, but it was like playing catch and stuff. It wasn't actually with force and intent behind it. And the plan was going to be to see if he could ramp up across October and a little bit into November, because if you're looking at a 15 to 18 month rehab, your drop dead point to get that surgery in is late October, early November. It's right around now. You need to either have the surgery or decide that you are good without it. Because if you wait to have the surgery until spring training next year, not only do you lose all of 2026, but then you don't come back until partway through 2027. If you have the surgery in October or November, your rehab time frame takes you right up into spring training. You should be back for the start of the season, theoretically, right? Remains to be seen what he looks like and how he feels and everything, but theoretically should be back by the start of spring training. Even if you do or don't have Grant Holmes to start the year, and again, we just don't know. The guys aren't physically all in Atlanta. Not everybody lives in Atlanta. And so we just don't know on Grant Holmes because he's not around to talk to the media. If any of you have his phone number, give him a call. Be like, hey, Grant Holmes, can you help me out here? How you doing? How's the elbow feeling? Give him a call. Let us know. You know? If he wants to come on the pod, Grant, I know you're watching. If you want to come on the pod, you are open invitation. I'd love to get some stories from you, some hair care tips. Obviously, I could use it. Open invitation. Come on the pod whenever you want to. Let us know how you're doing. I want to know. But in just a minute, let's talk about if Grant Holmes is back. What does the depth look like? How could you set the rotation up to start the year? And do you need to add a starter in that case? We'll break it down next right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Delete Me. They make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Because data brokers make a profit off your data, right? Like, they're not actually producing anything for society. They're just hoovering up all of the information on the internet. They're legally or illegally packaging it and selling it. And a lot of times it's used for illicit purposes. Identity theft, phishing, harassment, things like that. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. Take control of your data, keep your private life private, by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for Braves Today listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/HIT and use promo code HIT at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/HIT and enter code HIT in checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/HIT, promo code HIT. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsey Crosby. Let's talk about the scenario. I'm going to call it the best case scenario, right? The scenario of Ronaldo Lopez is a starter. Grant Holmes is healthy and is available for you. Because then your rotation in some sort of order, and I say that, this is probably the order. Chris Sale is your number one. I think it's hard to argue right now that anybody besides Chris Sale is the number one starter on this team. So Chris Sale is your number one. Spencer Strider and Spencer Schwellenbach, you can call them 2A and 2B. You can call them 2 and 3, however you want to do it. Schwellenbach last year had better performance as Strider was coming back from his second elbow surgery. Spencer Strider has the seniority and the career accolades. So some order, this probably depends on the manager. This probably depends on their throwing schedule in spring training. But your odds are your starters for games 2 and 3 of the regular season in some order, it will be a Spencer. The question is Strider, Schwellenbach, right? From there, starting pitcher number 4, Ronaldo Lopez. And then starting pitcher number 5, Grant Holmes. Like, you can see how just using these guys, everybody's back. Now, for 27, it's different. Chris Sale has no more team control. I do expect him to sign an extension this winter. I expect him to kind of get something that rolls over every year as long as he wants to pitch. We'll see if that is, in fact, what he does, but that's just what I feel like is going to happen. But you have a 1 through 5. You have Sale, you have Strider, you have Schwellenbach, you have Ronaldo Lopez. And again, in this scenario, we're assuming no news on Grant Holmes is good news, and that you'll have Grant Holmes as your number 5. In that case, you have a lot of depth that you'll figure out what to do with. Okay? This is something where Hurston Waldrop starts off in AAA. I think he was one of the more impressive pitchers down the stretch last year. He looked really good. In a normal situation, if you were only measuring this based off of the quality of the guy, no other considerations, a pure meritocracy, Hurston Waldrop would be in your starting 5 on opening day. Baseball's not like that, though. Other things matter. In this case, having minor league options is what matters, because Hurston Waldrop has them. And so many guys other than him are not on the same caliber as him, but they also don't have minor league options. They have less flexibility than he does. Bryce Elder doesn't have minor league options. Joey Wentz doesn't have minor league. Like, there's just so many things you can't do with those guys that you can do with Waldrop, right? Like, under this scenario, your starting 5 is your starting 5 in the rotation. You're then turning around and you're putting Bryce Elder and Joey Wentz and Jose Suarez all in your bullpen as starter/long mid. That's probably a scenario where you legitimately are running a 6-man rotation. Elder is your 6th starter. That gets everybody additional rest. And then when somebody goes down, and I'll get to that in a minute, when somebody goes down, you have a 5-man rotation. Wentz and Suarez are both working as long men out of the pen, which would leave you a 5-man bullpen, which, as of right now, not counting on, not talking about guys who are not yet signed. Right now, those 5 guys would be Joe Jimenez, Dylan Lee, Dylan Dodd, Aaron Bummer, and I would assume Joel Payamps. He's an arbitration eligible. Those would be the 5 in your pen. And then everybody else who looks promising would be in the minors. Whether it's a Hayden Harris, Daisybel Hernandez, Roldy Munoz, Hunter Stratton, all those other guys would be in the bullpen. That would be your bullpen as of now. Clearly, you need to figure out some sort of closing situation. I don't know if you can trust Joe Jimenez to immediately not only come back to the same level he was in 24, but from there go straight into the closing role. I do think you have to sign somebody. So, yeah, as of now, that's your starting 5, Herson, Waldrops, and Gwinnett. And you've got 2 or 3 starters in the pen. I do also think it's possible Aaron Bummer might get traded. You may also trade a Bryce Elder or one of those other... You're not going to trade a Jose Suarez for anything meaningful, right? You're probably not going to trade Joey Wentz for anything meaningful. Bryce Elder, you may get something. He's probably packaged into a larger deal. Maybe he's in the deal where you acquire some other starter. Again, if you do it via trade, we'll get to that in a few minutes. But this kind of best case scenario here, Sale, Strider, Schwellenbach, Lopez, Holmes, it's just running back the ideal rotation from last year. And then AJ Smith-Shawver, again, probably at best late in the year. He probably stays in the minors when he first comes back and he's competing for a job in 27 out of spring training. But that's also a little bit of ideal or optimistic scenario, right? Like, I don't necessarily think that you can count on that happening. Let's take an early break, and when we come back, we'll discuss the more realistic injury scenario and how Atlanta could handle that. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards, custom card manufacturer. I've mentioned them a lot. You upload your source photo of your child playing youth sports, the loser and the winner of your fantasy football team, family reunion photos, whatever it might be. You then choose all your holographic options. Their designers go in with background, all of the graphics and everything. They then print it on high-quality cardstock. They slab it in a plastic case, and they put a frame with a built-in stand on it to ship to you. These guys have just redone the whole website. It looks fantastic. They've also increased the discount for Braves Today listeners. So encasecards.com, ncasccards.com, promo code Braves Today gets you 20% off of your order. Again, promo code Braves Today at encasecards.com, ncasccards.com gets you 20% off with Encase Cards. You guys, capture the moment. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. I want to talk about the more realistic scenario for Atlanta next year, right? That second segment, that shorter second segment, that's the timing thing. I'm still working on that. That shorter second segment was more of an idealistic scenario, right? Everybody's available to start the year, and you have all of these depth pieces that you can kind of stash in the pen and then stash in Gwinnett. And I do think Gwinnett's a big part of this too. Because if you look at the options you have down there, okay, you're going to have back-end kind of fringe guys, right? So you're going to have a Nathan Wiles and Austin Cox. Alek Manoah is part of the organization. You're going to have a bunch of prospects. Blake Burkhalter, J.R. Ritchie, Didier Fuentes, Lucas Braun probably gets there kind of quickly. Drew Hackenberg may make his way there. Kind of had a setback in 25. We'll see what happens. But here's the issue with that optimistic scenario I gave in segment 2. You can cover the innings. You can cover the starts. Can we find 162 starts out of those, 17 names that I put in there? Yeah, you can probably find 162 starts. But if anything, Like, what have we learned from the Los Angeles Dodgers in the postseason this year? It's that the bigger deal is not getting all of those pitchers for the regular season. It's how many of them can you get to October? How many of those starters can you get available and fresh and healthy when you get to the postseason? Because that's why you have them. You don't need Chris Sale to throw to a 2.05 ERA in the regular season. You need him to hold Philly to 4 hits and 1 run in 6 innings in Citizens Bank Park in game 1 of a series. That's where you need him. And I think that when you take everybody that I named, all of those names, and you drop them into 2 buckets. Bucket 1, who is a playoff starter for you? You get to game 3 of a playoff series. Who am I throwing out there? And bucket 2 is everybody else. And right now, the playoff starters in this group: Sale, yes. Schwellenbach, yes. Strider, I'm a believer that he gets a lot closer to that 2023 form over the offseason. So I have him in that playoff starter bucket. Ronaldo Lopez. He said he's been dealing with that shoulder pain for years, and he's finally pain-free. We saw in 2024 what he could do even pitching through that shoulder pain. So I've got him in that playoff starter bucket too. And I think from what he showed late in the year, Hurston Waldrop deserves to be in that starter bucket, that playoff starter bucket too. There's a couple guys the jury's out on. Grant Holmes, the jury is still out on whether or not he will be both healthy and effective by the postseason next year. I think he's capable of being a playoff starter. I don't know if he will be both healthy and there. AJ Smith-Shawver, I do think in a normal season, he will be a playoff starter. I do think next year, there's an open question about which bucket he belongs in. Because again, we don't know how quickly and how well he will return from Tommy John. We just don't. I think most of your prospects are probably not yet sorted. A Blake Burkhalter, a J.R. Ritchie, a Didier Fuentes, a Lucas Braun. We don't know which bucket those guys belong in yet. But I think it's pretty clear there's a lot of other guys that we named that do not belong in the playoff starter bucket. Joey Wentz, not a playoff starter. Jose Suarez, not a playoff starter. Wiles, Cox, Alek Manoah, Bryce Elder, not playoff starters. Not guys you want in the playoffs. And the issue for Atlanta is that they're going to lose somebody. AA talked about this, right? We've had 1 or 2 significant injuries each year. That's what he said. And he kind of walked through, like, we'd lose a Fried for a significant period. We'd lose a Soroka. We'd lose a Kyle Wright. We'd lose a Strider. But if you're losing 5 to 6, that one's tough. The idea is Atlanta has enough depth to lose a starter early and make it through the season. The issue has been when they then lose guys late and they get to the postseason and they don't have enough. Look at the last couple postseason years, right? 2022, the NLDS Game 3, Spencer Strider comes off, I think it's an oblique injury, to start in that game. 2 1/3 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks against Philly, 5 earned runs, 4 strikeouts. Atlanta loses. 2023, NLDS Game 3. You throw Bryce Elder out there because you didn't have a third starter, right? Charlie Morton had that finger, I think was it 23 that Morton had that finger issue? Like, Fried had a short start. Charlie Morton wasn't available at all. And, like Bryce Elder in Game 3, 2 2/3, 5 hits, 2 of those are homers, 6 runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. 2024, you burned through everybody just trying to get to the postseason, and Chris Sale was down with the back issues. AJ Smith-Shawver went an inning and a third against San Diego. 4 hits, 1 of those was a homer, 3 earned runs, no walks, 1 strikeout. Again, I'm not saying this to dog on AJ Smith-Shawver. I love that kid. I think he's awesome. I'm just doing this to explain you lose a guy every year, it feels like. Every single season, somebody's going down. But there's other attrition throughout the season. And by the time you get to the postseason, Atlanta typically doesn't have enough playoff caliber starters. And so I think Atlanta needs to add a starter here for that reason. And I keep doing this. I'm going to go back to the Los Angeles parallel. Like, look at what they did in the regular season this year. They used 17 different guys to start games. Now, quite a few of those were relievers and bullpen games. They ran a lot of bullpen games. Like, going over the numbers here, they ran like 14 bullpen games over the course of the regular season. And then they had guys like Landon Knack started 7 games. Tony Gonsolin started 7 games. And because like Blake Snell only had 11. Ohtani only had 14. Glasnow only had 18. The only guy who actually posted and had more than 112 innings for the Dodgers this year was Yamamoto. He had 173 and 2/3 and had like the second best ERA in the National League. Like, he's worth that $325 million contract. But the plan was get to the postseason. And they were able to get enough of these guys healthy in the postseason, where in the postseason, they have been absolutely filthy. And you look at these guys, Yamamoto has back-to-back complete games. Glasnow's been good. Snell's been good. Ohtani's been good. And that's really been the only 4 starters that they've needed in the postseason. But they've had 4 playoff caliber starters. And I'm not saying Atlanta has the money to go get a Blake Snell or something like that, or something like that. But what I'm saying is, you have, by my own count, you have 5 playoff caliber starters right now. What are the odds that you can get 4 of them to October? Feels like it's not great. So if you add 1 more playoff caliber starter, you start Waldrop in the minors, you still have a rotation full of playoff caliber starters. You have 6 options at that point. It's a lot more likely that you can get 4 to October. Or at the very least, get 3. Because there's been so many times where Atlanta has, again, you saw me in there. 2022, Spencer Strider was not very effective in Game 3. They didn't have any other options. 2023, they had to decide AJ Smith-Shawver or Bryce Elder. They went with Bryce Elder. He was not very good. They didn't have any other options. 2024, they shot through everybody just to get into the postseason. They threw they threw Schwellenbach in that final weekend. They threw Morton in that final weekend. They threw everybody in that final weekend just to get to the postseason. If you add 1 more playoff caliber starter, the odds are a lot better that you can get 3 of them to October. Because, again, you have plenty of guys to take innings. And you have to get through those innings to get to the postseason. And yes, being in the postseason is something we didn't do this year. But we all know the goal in Atlanta is not make the postseason. That is not the goal for the Atlanta Braves. The goal for the Atlanta Braves is contend for a World Series. And just having this rotation is not enough to feel comfortable or confident that you will have enough starters when you get to the postseason. Now, do I personally think that the offense is potentially a much bigger deal here? Yes, and we're going to talk about that this week. We're going to talk about better production from the top. We're going to talk about the black holes at the bottom of the lineup. Like, we're going to do all of that stuff. But on the pitching side, since Alex Anthopoulos has made it clear they want to add a starter this winter, it needs to be quality over quantity. This has been Braves Today for Tuesday, October 28th. Do me a favor, if you're listening on audio, a 5-star review would be awesome. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we go live, drop a short. Try to get better about just throwing out little 60-second shorts with questions or thoughts or things like that I have, because people apparently want to know those. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.